Hi guys, my name is Hashid Hameed, and as you see, I'm going to talk about performance in Magento. And before I start, let me just introduce myself. As most people sitting here, I started my career as a Magento developer back in 2013. And since then, I think for the last 10 years, all my work has been focused around Magento. And for the last 8 years, I've been heading Codilar, which is a digital commerce agency based in Bangalore, and which also primarily focuses on Magento, right? And I've been fortunate enough to be part of a lot of Meet Magento events, and especially Meet Magento India. This is the sixth event, and we've been sponsoring and attending all of the Meet Magento events. And for me personally, this is my 11th Meet Magento across the globe, and one of my favorite events. All right, so yeah. So before we talk about performance, it's very helpful to understand, where performance issues arise in Magento. This is how I usually start, talking about performance, right? So Magento, as you all know, is open source, right? Which means that the entire code base is accessible for you as a developer, and you can basically pretty much change everything the way you want, right? Which is what makes it very flexible. Now, what happens is that as a developer, it is your responsibility to ensure you don't change the wrong things at the wrong places, right? So, unlike other platforms like Shopify or some enterprise platforms which are closed, you don't get to do a lot of mistakes, right? So, because of that, if you do wrong things, then you are bound to hit bottlenecks. The other reason is that as people call it nowadays, right? Magento is a monolithic platform, meaning that the entire features come in a single code base, right? It's a single code base, and you have a lot of modules. This is um, the word monolithic is very new, but this is what how the most softwares are, right? So that means Magento as a system is very large. So there are, I think, thousands of files and maybe lakhs and lakhs of code that gets executed when you access Magento, which makes it heavy, right? And the third thing is that in Magento you have the ultimate freedom, right? So beyond code, let's say you have coded your e-commerce platform. Now it's up to you where to host it, how to host it. You can host it in your server room, you can host it in AWS, you can host it in some shared hosting. It's all up to you. You have the ultimate freedom, right? So so now that means that if you don't do these things right, you're going to hit bottlenecks, and this is where the performance issues of Magento come from. Now, while I say that, these are the exact same reasons why we love Magento. Most of us love Magento, right? Now, so this has been talked by most people, and we have heard it multiple times. And depending on who you talk to, uh, as a merchant, you will be suggested different solutions to fix your performance issues. Now, these are the major solutions that is, you know, I mean, that is popular nowadays, right? And what I have seen is that when a merchant faces performance issues, some of them rush into a solution without thinking of the other implications, right? So, for example, let's say you have a performance issue. Your website is loading slow, basically, right? And maybe you choose a PWA or something else. Now, what can happen is that if you don't know what really goes behind the scenes, what was working for you might stop working, right? Or what was very effortless for you on your current store might throw a lot of additional effort. This is what happens when you rush into solutions. So because of that, I want to discuss about these solutions and just basically focus on what could go wrong and what is meant, I mean, who is the solution meant for. This first one being progressive web app. Now at Codilar, we have, I think, built about 12 PWs right now, and we mostly use Vue Storefront and Scandy PW and PW Studio and all that, right? And we have built it on Magento open source plus Adobe Commerce Cloud and even Adobe Commerce Enterprise. And by PWA, what I mean is headless single page app with whatever Google calls a PWA to be. Now, it is true that with a PWA, you are going to get a very super fast website because your pages are not going to load. And once you load one page and just go around the website, click on different categories and products, each page is going to load instantly, right? And that's going to give you a lot of speed. You can check out one of the PWAs that we built for Wingreens, which is an Indian brand. This was actually shortlisted as Adobe Experience Maker of the Year finalist for the last year. Right, so you can see how quickly each page opens up. So it's really super fast and it's mobile friendly. So it actually can work like an app. And as I said, it's also headless. So if you build a PWA as a single page app, your front end is being decoupled from your back end, right? Now, what that offers you is that you no longer have to worry about what is there in your backend. You can do multiple innovation with your front end, right? So you can have a different team for front end, and they can keep experimenting with their front end, and let's say mix and match different services. Right? Let's say you want to have the catalog from Magento, but the checkout from some other service, and different recommendation engine, different merchandising engine, and different CMS. So all this can be done only if you have a headless front end. So you get those both of these benefits, right? Now, the biggest pain point that I have seen when people use progressive web app is that SEO, search engine optimization, is very tricky, right? So in a normal Magento front end, most merchants take it for granted because it just works, right? In PWAs, since it is client-side rendered, uh, Google bots or other search bots cannot really understand what a page looks like, what content is there in the page, right? So that is why when some merchants rush into a PWA just for the speed, their SEO rankings drop because they've not understood what really happens. Now there are a lot of solutions for it. You can do server-side rendering. I think there's a talk about that in today's session. You can do static site generation. You can do pre-rendering. You can do dynamic rendering. There are a lot of different workarounds for it, but you have to do some legwork. It cannot be ignored. And the other thing is that since it's a different front end, out of the box extension support you might not get. So let's say you're installing an extension which has some front end to it, it will not show up in your PWA. Now this is additional effort. And you're also bringing a new layer of complexity. So you have your Magento backend, you have your front end, and there is an API layer, right? Now if you want to build, let's say, a feature which affects all of these three, then that's a lot of additional complexity, right? But having said that, it's a great solution. I actually have given a lot of talks about PWAs, but I believe PWAs are for merchants who are either large, let's say enterprisey sort of stuff, and who are invested in making their e-commerce win. It's not an experiment for them, or they're not just trying whether e-commerce works. So they know that they have to be within e-commerce, and they want to make it win, and they have the budget to make it win. So for such people, PWA is definitely a must-have. For small merchants, I think it's an overkill. Right, so the second solution is the alternative themes that are very popular right now. So we have Huva people here, and I've seen a theme called Alpaca, and I've seen a theme called Breeze. So what they do is, so what they fix is that Magento's front-end templating system is quite heavy, right? So you have your layout structure, you have your required JS and knockout JS, and all of these things are heavy. Now these teams basically revamped that and built their own framework for the front end, right? Now, most of these themes I have personally tried, and it's very fast and lightweight, and especially Huva also claims that as a developer, you will get a very good experience, right? Now, while it sounds good, what could be the cons of having such a solution? So one is, again, out-of-the-box extension support may not be there for all of these things because it's a different front end. So unless an extension vendor decides that their extension is going to be compatible with Huva or Alpaca, it will not be compatible. You'll have to basically develop your own code for it. And next thing is the learning curve and talent. So I don't know how many Magento developers are there in India, but maybe I think only a fraction of them would already have learned Huva. So if as a merchant you implement Huva, your options of agencies and developers are less. Already Magento developers are very less. Now you're going one more level down. And the third thing is there is a lot of dependency on one single vendor. So most of these platforms are built by companies who are just started and small, right? So let's say I don't want to say that, but but you're putting a lot of dependency on that single company, right? So let's say they stop supporting it, or let's say one of them is not open source. So you don't know, like if you've built your front end on it and tomorrow they're not making any updates for your Magento versions, what do you do? Like so. With Adobe or Magento, you know that Adobe is going to support it, and there's a huge community of open source players there. So yeah, so the point is, I think Huwa or Alpaca or Breeze is a great solution for small players who should not invest in a PWA and have additional complexities. For people who want to have faster performance and do not have a lot of budget and maybe they're not in that mature stage, I think this is a great solution. Yeah. And this is one of my favorite solutions. So if you talk to Adobe people, they're going to say that you have to use Adobe Commerce Cloud. Only then you'll have good performance, right? And we are obviously a partner of Adobe, and that is not the reason why I love it. I love Adobe Commerce Cloud because the way it has been architected is basically keeping performance at the forefront. So if you see their infrastructure and the way they have integrated with Fastly and Fastly Varnish, which I'll be showing a demo on, and all the performance monitoring tools like Neuralink and Blackfire.io. So they know that performance has been a problem in Magento, and they have sort of solved it, right? And it's fully managed. You don't have to take care of your servers. You don't have to worry about security attacks. It's a PCI DSS infrastructure and all that. So the only con is that you have to pay a license fee compared to Magento open source. But if you are an enterprise and you have the money and you don't want the headache and the overheads of setting up on your own, this is the best solution. And you can even combine it with a PWA, and I don't think much of alternative things. But if you combine with a PWA, like how Wingreen's World I just showed you, it's on Adobe Commerce Cloud with a PWA front end. So it can be a great solution, okay? And with the way Adobe Commerce is progressing with API Mesh and Adobe IO and all, I think it's going to be a killer solution there. And the fourth option is, as a merchant, if you have performance issues, and if you go to an agency, they'll tell you the previous agency did a shitty job, so we'll have to rebuild it. Or let's say if that agency is not into Magento, they might say, no, why are you using Magento? There is Shopify or that or this, right? So they'll suggest you to rebuild or replatform. Now the problem is that as a merchant, you're already suffering and you're already frustrated. And when somebody gives a solution like this, it's basically a devil that is unknown. It's good or bad, but you don't know, right? And I've seen that, I've seen many merchants struggling to come out of this performance issues from Magento. They go to different agencies and different developers and different, but it sticks with them like a curse. Okay, so all of the solutions that I told you are basically high effort, meaning you have to spend a lot of hours and a lot of money to do any of this, right? Now I'm just coming to my talk. I have not started it. So I want to talk about tuning Magento to unbelievable speeds with minimal effort. So if you look at it, right, yesterday I was checking builtwith.com, and it says that there are about 9,000 Magento websites in the world today, which are under top 1 million. Okay, so which are under top 1 million rank. There are 9,000 websites, and if you take the entire internet, I think it's about 4 lakh websites. So let's not consider the 4 lakh. Maybe some people have just developed it for the sake of it, or it's development servers or whatever. But I think the top 1 million of the 9,000 websites are doing business, okay? And in that, around 80 to 85% are not using any of the solution. They are not using a PWA, they are not using a Hua, they are not using a Adobe Commerce Cloud. They are using the normal Magento front end, right? So my talk is for them. So if a merchant is using Magento and they have a Magento front end and they are facing bottlenecks, I want to share a couple of techniques, very simple techniques, which can transform your speed to unbelievable speeds. It's a very difficult word to say. Okay, so first let's understand how a website works, how a Magento website with Magento front end works. So let's say as a user, you're sitting here. Let's say you're sitting in Mumbai and you're going to abcstore.com/t-shirts. So what happens is your request goes from Mumbai to wherever that server is located, right? So it goes through a lot of networks. So it might go to your ISP first, and hundreds of networks are hopped, and it finally reaches the server where your Magento code is sitting. Now it understands what you're trying to request. Then it make some calls to the database, gets those products and whatever data. Then what happens is then it renders as a page, okay, as an HTML document, and then that HTML document basically travels back to your computer. Just visualize this, okay? So there's a lot of things happening when you basically press the enter button after typing it up on your address URL. Okay, so that is one part. Now, once the HTML document is generated by your server and comes back to your browser, this is when your browser basically has to go through this big HTML file. That could be between 2,000 to 3,000 lines for a Magento homepage, okay? And the browser basically reads and parses the HTML. And in that, again, a lot of references to other assets are mentioned. For example, it will request for a lot of other images, external JavaScript files, CSS files, and also again, a lot of requests are made, which also go through the network and reaches wherever that server is and comes back. So a lot of network calls are happening, right? And once that is done, the browser renders the page in your browser. That's when you get to see the page and you are able to interact. So all of these things happen in the background. So for the sake of, I should be pointing here, right? Okay. So to make it very simple, let's divide performance into two. So the first part, which I told you, you hit a URL, it goes to the server and comes back, right? Let's call it backend performance. Now you can see something called TTFB, right? TTFB means time to first byte. So what that means is, you hit a web page, it reaches a server, okay, it does all the logic building and get calling from the database and everything, and the final HTML is generated, right? Now that HTML basically comes back to the browser. So the time it takes for the HTML, the first byte of the HTML to reach the browser is called time to first byte, right? Now that depends on a lot of different factors. If your server is bad, you'll have a long time to first byte. If your code is very bad, you'll have a long time to first byte. If your database is bad, you'll have a long time to first byte. And even if your server is in a far location, so if I'm sitting in Mumbai and my server is in US, it has to hop through a lot of networks, right? That also adds a lot of latency. I'll talk about that in a bit, right? So let's call it backend performance. Now the HTML document has reached your browser, right? Now the browser has to basically process this HTML and display the front end in your browser. Let's call it front end performance. And it's very difficult to basically quantify front end performance. Do you know why? Because humans are involved, right? So when you're looking at the browser, performance means how fast you're able to see the website and interact with the website. So you cannot basically quantify it with one metric. That's why Google has been coming up with a lot of metrics. So now they have Core Web Vitals, which is your LCP, largest contentful paint, and CLS, cumulative layout shift, and FID, which is first input delay. Okay, I'm not going into all of that because my solution does not need you to know any of these things. Okay. So Google says that if your LCP, CLS, and FID is good, then your user is having a very good experience. That's what they claim, and they've been changing these metrics. This is the latest metrics that they have. Okay. So I hope you're clear about this. Now let's talk about the first part, the backend performance. So for a Magento website, when I checked some of the websites, I found that the average TTFB for a Magento website is somewhere between 1 second to 3 seconds, right? So just imagine, for your request to go there and for the HTML to get generated, it takes 3 seconds. Now that HTML has to come to your browser, it has to download all the images, download all the assets, it has to process all the JavaScript and show the front end. All that happens after the 3 seconds, right? We are talking about 2-second page load. That's what everybody says, right? Website loads in 2 seconds. But just imagine if it takes 3 seconds for your server to respond, right? Which is huge. Now, I'm going to show you how we can increase the speed by 100 times. And it's very, very easy and does not need any coding. not much of coding, and you don't need a lot of developers to do it. Okay, and some of you already know it. Yeah. Sorry, this is my first talk on a stage, so I'm not used to using a ticker. So basically, Magento has something called full page cache, and people use Varnish for it. Now, what that does is, I'll come to the side. So first, I told you that the request, goes to a server, and server has to do a lot of work. There's a thousands of lines of code has to run. Database calls have to be made. Data has to be, finally rendered into an HTML page, and then it goes back. That's where all your 3 seconds go, right? Now, imagine you put Varnish in front of your server. Okay, Varnish is it's a reverse proxy. Okay, so what happens is, let's say a user visits abcstore.com/t-shirts for the first time. Okay, now the request goes to Varnish, and Varnish checks if it already has a response for this request or not. Okay, first time it will not have. So then the request goes to this server. It takes 3 seconds for your HTML to get generated. Then it puts a copy here. Okay, then that user basically had a terrible experience. But the next user and all the thousands or lakhs of other users, what they will face is the request will come to Varnish, but Varnish already has a copy, right? It just instantly gives it. There's no thinking. It's just you come, ask me, I'll just give it, right? Now, doing that can reduce your TTFB from 3 seconds to somewhere between 100 milliseconds to 300 milliseconds. That's almost 20 to 30 times increasing in your performance, right? It's a very simple solution, and most of you use it. If you're not using it, you're doing a very big crime. So how can you improve this further? Okay, fine. So I told you that it takes about 100 milliseconds to 300 milliseconds. Now imagine I'm sitting in Mumbai and my Varnish server is in, let's say, US, right? Still the request has to reach there. It hits the Varnish and has to come back, right? So that takes a lot of time. That the 100 milliseconds to 300 milliseconds, in that 90% of the time is actually the travel time, right? So imagine what if you have Varnish servers across the globe, okay? And from Mumbai, if I hit that page, what if a server next to Mumbai can give me the response? Okay, that is called basically edging, right? So you can put Varnish on the edge. So let's say your server is in the US, but you can have Varnish servers across the globe, right? And all of these Varnish servers will have a copy of each of these pages, depending on when people visit, right? So if you do that, your TTFB can further come down to 20 milliseconds. So we are talking about from 3000 milliseconds, we have reduced to 20 milliseconds. 20 millisecond is 1/5 the time it takes for you to blink your eye. So most people blink an eye in 100 milliseconds. So in 1/5 the time, you get your response. Right? Now, how to do this? Right? So you don't have to do anything. So there is Fastly, right? So if you're on Adobe Commerce Cloud, you're already using this. All Adobe Commerce Cloud have Fastly built into it. And if you're on Community, there's already a module. Just subscribe for Fastly and integrate it with your store. You will get this. Okay, and in Fastly, there's one more advantage. So with this setup, the disadvantage is, so if I am in Mumbai and I'm hitting a page, let's say abc.com, it goes to the Mumbai node. Okay, and if the page is not there in Mumbai node, the cache is not there, it goes to US, right? Then come back to Mumbai and comes to my server. That is an additional request, right? Actually, that worsens the situation. And let's say the request comes back to Mumbai and the copy is there in Mumbai. Let's say somebody from Bangalore hits the same page. It goes to the Bangalore node and he will not have this copy, right? Does it make sense? So then his request also goes to US and comes back. So basically your hit ratio to the cache is going to drastically come down. Now Fastly has a solution for that. So they use something called shielding. Okay, in shielding what happens is, so let's say you have different nodes in different parts of the world. For example, a user in Lyon is hitting a page. So his request goes to the Fastly node in Paris, okay? Now, as a client, you can designate one of the node as your shielding node or a primary node. So if I have most of my traffic coming from Mumbai, I can say that this is my shielding node. So all the requests to other nodes will not directly go to my server or origin. It goes through the Mumbai. So what happens is a user in Paris is hitting the URL. It goes to the Fastly Virginia first, and then it goes to the origin. Then it comes to Virginia, then goes to Paris, and goes to the user. So the origin is not touched. Means the code is still not executed. Where your server is there, right? That is not being touched. And usually the connection between the nodes within Fastly network are the network is much more faster and easier to reach because it belongs to the same company, right? I have only 5 more minutes. Oh my god. Okay, I'll just rush through it then. Fine. So we talked about that. So now we have brought down 3,000 milliseconds to 20 milliseconds, right? That's a great boost. That 100x, more than 100x boost. Now, if you combine it with using cache warming, basically the whatever I told you, right? You need a user to basically hit the page. Only then the cache is generated. Then the next user will get that copy, right? What if you can set up automated bots which go and hit all the pages when they go out of cache, right? So let's say we're talking about e-commerce, right? There are constant price changes, there are constant stock outs, or whatever, right? So the cache gets refreshed all the time. So if a solution can identify, okay, this page is not in cache, go and hit it, right? So when real users go and come, they don't see the 3 seconds TTFB, they see a 20 millisecond TTFB. So that's called cache warming. Just rush. So the idea is to get a 100% hit ratio. Basically go towards that. And there are a lot of extensions for this. And there is something called cwarmer.io, which we are building at Codelar. It's in beta stage right now. So it's a fully SaaS-based solution. It sits outside your Magento. Again, very minimal effort to integrate. What it does is it can understand which page is in cache right now, which is not in cache. And whenever any page goes out of cache, it goes and hits. And since it sits outside Magento, it can generate the hits from multiple geographies. So if you want to warm different nodes within your Fastly network, you can do that. And in Magento, each page, even though it has the same URL, might have different caches. Because for a customer who's logged in, there's a different page. Who's a guest, there's a different page. A particular customer group has a different page, right? So all those context identification it can do, and it can hit those pages. Sorry. So I'll just show you a demo and maybe stop my talk. So this is the kind of performance that you will get if you have Fastly with proper warming. Okay, this is one of our clients. It's for Carter's UAE. So you just see how I'm navigating the page and how quickly it is loading. It's like almost instant. So this is no other thing. This is just Magento Luma based theme with Adobe Commerce Cloud, Fastly Varnish, and proper warming. So everything that you click on the page opens just like that. So, and I'm actually showing on the dev console what is the TTFB. So it may not be visible to you. So I'll just read it out. So I'm just refreshing the home page and hovering on the TTFB. When I'm not able to see, it's 30 milliseconds. So instead of 3000 milliseconds, get a 30 milliseconds. And you don't need a lot of coding for that. Just implement, understand the basics and use common sense and implement solutions. How much time I have? I'm done. Okay. So we covered the backend performance. It's very simple to do, right? Now let's see what we can do in the front end. So if you see in e-commerce, right, what comprises the majority of elements in an e-commerce page, right? It's mostly images. So if you go to homepage, you have a lot of carousels and a lot of blogs and banners and all that. If you go to PLP, again, a lot of images. If you go to PDP, again, hundreds of images, right? So the easiest thing that you can do to optimize front end is optimize those images, okay? So about 20 to 50% of the total number of requests that go from your browser is to get the images. And 50% of the entire page size is also contributed by images, right? So two things you have to do here. One is you have to optimize image delivery, right? So just think of the request that I told you. So HTML document has reached the browser, and the HTML documents is referencing to a lot of images. So it has to again make requests to get those images. So if I'm in Mumbai and all the images are sitting in US, and I have, let's say, 50 images. So 50 calls have to go to US and come back, right? So instead of that, use a CDN, which is a no-brainer, and most of them are using it. So if you have a CDN, it comes from one of the edge nodes nearest to you, right? So this, most people are doing it. And what most people are not doing is basically intelligent image optimization. So two things you have to do. So one is format, right? So you have to have a solution which can understand what is the browser that you're visiting from, what is the device you're using, and depending on that, I'm going to supply that image to you. So if you're on latest browser with the latest device, you should get an AVIF or WebP instead of a JPG, right? So if you do that, the formatting, you'll get the right format and it'll be in very less size. And the second is auto resize. So just imagine a homepage of an e-commerce website. If you're viewing it on a large TV like this, all the images have to be maybe shown very big, right? If you're using it on a small mobile phone, maybe the responsive UI make it looks like a thumbnail. So you don't need the same image size for both the devices, right? So you need to have a solution that can understand what kind of what is the image size required for that viewport, okay? So if you're showing it as a small icon, then the solution should understand how it is looking in the UI, right? So there are different solutions for it. So we have used gumlet.com. So you have to just put their JS in your front end and use their CDN, then it works automatically. It has lazy loading and everything, right? We have also used Image Engine by Share Mobile. So if you use this, what I've seen in my experience is a website which has a Google page speed score of, let's say, 25 to 30 can go up to 70, 80 just by doing this. You don't have to do any other hangama. So that's the kind of boost that you can get. So I'm almost nearing the end of my talk. So some tips before I stop is that if you have a website, always use a performance monitoring tool, because different things change on your website. Developers are checking in different codes and making new features and all. So you need to always monitor the performance. And New Relic is the best tool that I have seen, because it can monitor the application's performance also. And it can also tell you what the real users are experiencing, right? Because it monitors the front end. And also engage a specialized Magento specialized server management team. So a server management team which can understand the application, right? So if you go to a generic person, they will not understand what can go wrong in Magento or what is the right configuration required for Magento, right? So I can recommend LuroConnect. They are here. We have worked with them. They are brilliant. They can set up the right stack for you and host it in the right way. And third thing is get a performance audit done. So if you are suffering from speed issues, don't rush into any solution. You can implement the solution that I just told, because that may take maybe a one week to implement. But the other solution which I discussed, don't rush into it. Get a performance audit done. Understand where the issue is. Is it in your backend or is it in your front end? If it is in your backend and if your TTFB is high, even if you change the Magento front end theme, there's not going to be much difference, right? So you have to understand where the bottleneck is. So once you understand that, then you can look at different solutions. So you can engage an agency, Magento agency, which specializes in performance. I don't have to name a one. I hope you can already understand. Okay, so that's about it. I hope it was useful. Thank you so much. If you have any question, you can ask me. Yeah. Yeah, so basically you're asking, when you make changes on the website, the cache gets invalidated, and can something already warm it? Yeah, basically you have to use a cache warmer. That's what I was telling you, right? So we have built something called cwarmer.io. You can use that, or you can use, there are a lot of extensions. There's one by Amast, there's one by Mirasfit, but they sit inside your Magento. So that can be an additional overhead within your Magento instance. Ideally, it should not sit, because it does not belong to a commerce functionality. So that's why we built cwarmer as a separate SaaS tool. So it can identify when a page goes out of cache. So when, let's say, price changes, or let's say stock is out and the PLP page changes, right? So we can identify this and just go and hit the URL. That do from different IPs, so that you can warm in different fastly nodes. Does that answer the question?
Any other question? Okay, one more question.
One is shading. So, as of my understanding, if we have set up the origin and different request lines from the employee or the government, then all the requests first comes from the origin, right? So, will it take the load on that because all the requests are served from the origin first, and then if there are some fetching on that, then we go for the real server. So, will it take the load on that?
So, okay, so what he has asked is, in the shielding setup that I just told, uh, all the requests comes to the shield node. So let's say we have assigned Mumbai as the shielding node, all the requests go to the shielding node, then it goes to the origin, right? Will that cause bottleneck in the shielding node? So that will not cause. See, just imagine if you don't have the setup, where does all the requests go to? It goes to your origin, right? Where all the, there is no caching, right? So you are talking about a node which is a cache, right? Which is just nothing but a reverse proxy. It might be an Nginx or a Varnish, right? So it does not take any load. So it's like having a load balancer, right? So let's say you have a single load balancer and multiple instances. All the requests go to the load balancer, right? So that will not cause any issues because there's no logic processing or database calls. There are no heavy stuff happening there. So that will not be a problem. Yeah. So thank you so much, guys. Yeah.